El senador Bernie Sanders hizo vibrar al distrito de Davenport en Iowa. Todo esto ante una multitud abarrotada en su gira Lucha contra la Oligarquía. Él llevó un mensaje muy poderoso a Iowa, tal como lo está haciendo por todos los estados de Estados Unidos. Él ha pasado por todos lados, sin importar si son estados demócratas, republicanos o no importa qué apoyen. Él simplemente va y dice lo que piensa. Él le dijo: Donald Trump, lárgate, si eres incapaz de aceptar una crítica, eres un hombre débil. La multitud adora a este hombre y mira el porqué, mira el clip.
This great big bully is afraid of people criticizing him. So, Mr. President, if you are afraid of criticism, get the hell out of politics.
Déjame mostrarte la multitud abarrotada y cómo recibieron a Bernie Sanders en Iowa. Eso me encanta, a mí me encanta que Bernie Sanders no tiene miedo de ir a estados rojos, o sea, estados republicanos, y decir las cosas como son. Él habla de cómo los oligarcas están destruyendo a los trabajadores. Esto trasciende más allá del estado rojo, un estado azul, un estado morado, demócrata, republicano, trasciende mucho más allá. Él habla sobre la verdadera lucha que está ocurriendo dentro de Estados Unidos. Mira el clip, por favor.
Help me welcome to the stage Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, Davenport. This is quite a turnout. Thank you all very much for being here.
Luego el senador Bernie Sanders dice: miren, quiero hablar de cosas que los medios no están hablando. Quiero hablar de algo que la gente no está hablando dentro del Congreso. Así que observa cómo el senador hace justamente eso aquí. Mira el clip, por favor.
What I want to do tonight is talk for a little bit about some of the issues that you're not going to see in corporate media or talked about in the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate. And then what we'll do is you'll ask me questions and I'll ask you questions, and we'll do what this country is supposed to be about: experience democracy. All right, let me start off by telling you why we have framed the tours that have taken us all over this country called Fighting Oligarchy. Now, what we don't talk about as a nation very much is who has the wealth and who has the power. Don't talk about that very much. The reality is that right now in our great country, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of the United States of America. You have, if you can believe it, and one of the things that I want you to be thinking about, ask me about, I'll ask you about. You know, if some kid robs a 7-Eleven, everyone says, that's terrible, gets a gun, put him in jail, fine, it's a crime. But sometimes when you're talking about billionaires and corporate executives doing far more serious criminal activity, we don't get outraged about that. So here's a fact. It's a fact I doubt you've ever seen on TV or heard certainly members of the Iowa delegation in Washington talk about. That is, in America today, if you could believe it, and it is true, one person, his name is Elon Musk, one person owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of American households. All right, let me stop right there. One person, more wealth than the bottom 52% of households. Does that vaguely make sense to any person in this room? Thanks for the reinforcement. Huh? And then you have the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 93%. You have CEOs, and there was a new study coming out recently, but I'll give you the conservative numbers. CEOs of large corporations make 350 times what their workers make. This is not what America is supposed to be about. There always have been rich and always have been poor, and I don't know when that's ever going to change. But not that grotesque level of inequality.
Así que como parte de todo este discurso, Bernie Sanders habla con el público y les preguntan cómo se sienten al respecto de la situación actual del país. Porque él dice que actualmente con tanta tecnología, con tanto dinero, con tantos avances, y siendo Estados Unidos una potencia que tiene para tener tantas cosas, muchas personas se sienten peor incluso que hace 50 años. Y cuando escuchas a estas personas hablar te das cuenta de que todos sufren de lo mismo. Tienen una deuda que no pueden pagar, tienen una casa que no pueden pagar, viven día a día, no pueden ahorrar absolutamente nada, porque si deben $1000 y ganan 1100, les sobran 100 para poder sobrevivir y se endeudan cada día más. Esto prácticamente es una tortura psicológica para ellos. A Bernie Sanders le gusta escuchar muy bien para luego hablar, y te voy a mostrar eso en un momento. Primero que todo quiero hablar del hecho de que Bernie Sanders considera que Donald Trump es un dictador. Un dictador al servicio de los oligarcas, claro, para sostenerlo. Así que escucha lo que tiene que decir Bernie Sanders, por favor.
Had clients who opposed him. He is going after universities because they teach courses that he doesn't like. And right now, all across this country, including Iowa, we have ICE agents, sometimes with masks around their faces, throwing people into vans and taking them illegally, unconstitutionally to detention centers. And now you have military transportation tanks, etc., in our nation's capital. And understand what all of this is about. We can argue about a sane immigration policy. Honest people have different points of view. We can argue how you effectively deal with crime problems, which are too high in many parts of the country. But this is not about immigration policy. This is not about dealing with crime. This is about a president who is showing the American people that he is prepared to utilize power and move against people who dissent and disagree with him. That's what this is about. Now, you may not have heard much about this from your representatives here in Iowa. But a month ago or so, July 4th, I think it was, more than a month, Trump signed what I believe to be the most dangerous piece of legislation ever passed in the modern history of this country. Trump's big, beautiful bill was anything but beautiful. What that legislation did was provide, at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, when the rich never had it so good, he gave them $1 trillion in tax breaks. He gave, if you can believe it, the top 0.2% over $200 billion in tax breaks. He gave large, profitable corporations $900 billion in tax breaks. And that is pretty disgusting. But you know what is even worse is how he paid for it. Iowa, Vermont, and America are facing an enormous crisis in healthcare. We got 85 million Americans today who are uninsured or underinsured. Obviously, what our job has got to do is to do what every other major country on earth does, and that is to guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child. All right? That is what you want. That is what I want. That is what the people of Vermont want. That is what people all over this country want. But you know what Trump did? He said, well, we got 85 million uninsured or underinsured. Let's see how we can make a horrible situation even worse. Let us make $1 trillion cut in Medicaid and cuts in the Affordable Care Act that will throw, if you can believe it, 15 million Americans off of the health care they currently have. So instead of providing coverage to more people, what we are doing is throwing 15 million people off. And let me be very frank, I'm not happy to have to tell you this, but it will not surprise you. When you throw 15 million people off of the health care that they have, and these are people who are low-income people, these are working-class people, that means that people will not be able to go to a doctor when they should be going. And the result of that, according to various studies that have been done, is that tens of thousands of Americans will die unnecessarily because of that legislation. That is how horrific, how unacceptable is that. And I have talked to doctors, Vermont and all over this country, and they tell me right now that patients walk in much sicker than they should be. And the doctor asked the obvious question, why didn't you come in when you first had your symptoms several months ago? And the answer is, you know what the answer is. Well, I don't have any health insurance, or I can't afford the deductible, or I can't afford the copayment, I just couldn't come in. And some of those people don't make it, because by the time they get into a doctor's office, their symptoms have gotten worse. That is what this legislation is about. Tax breaks for billionaires, cutting health care, and by the way, in the state of Iowa, your fairly small state, 95,000 people are going to lose their health insurance that they have. It is throwing kids off of nutrition programs. Now, in the richest country on earth, no child, no individual should have to struggle to feed himself or herself. Unfortunately, that is not the case. But as a result of this bill, millions of people are going to lose the nutrition benefits that they had. As a result of this bill and the need to give tax breaks to billionaires, it is going to be harder for our young people to afford to go to college, not to mention many other disastrous provisions. That is the legislation that Trump gave to the American people. And in my view, no member of the House, no member of the Senate who voted for that legislation should be reelected.
Esta es una de mis partes favoritas de la entrevista, pues Bernie Sanders comienza a preguntarle y a interactuar con la multitud y les dice: ¿ustedes por qué consideran que actualmente están peor que hace 50 años? Y la multitud dice que se siente mal porque consideran que Donald Trump es un depredador. Se aprovecha de eso, le miente a las personas, las convence y luego de convencerlas, les quita absolutamente todo y se lo da a los ricos. Algo así como un Robin Hood, pero al revés. El senador capta esto y va directo al grano. Miren el clip, por favor.
I want to ask you a question now. There was an interesting poll that came out a couple of years ago by the Pew Research Center, and they are well respected. And I want you to think about this. They asked the American people, they said, okay, tell me, are you better off today than somebody like you was 50 years ago. Got it? All right. The question is, are you better off than somebody who was like you? You're middle class, working class, whatever you may be. Somebody like you 50 years ago. Were they better off then, or are you better off now? All right, Mike, raise your hand if you think we are better off today than was the case 50 years ago. Whoa. All right. I want you to take a deep breath and think about that. Think about all of the technology that's out there, right? You got computers today, didn't have them 50 years ago. You got cell phones, didn't have them. You have these big flat screen TVs, right? You got medical treatments that are better today than they were if you had cancer and other diseases. And yet, what I'm looking at in this audience here in Davenport, that the vast majority of the people think that life in general was better 50 years ago. Why is that? Why was that the case? Give me some thoughts on that. Hold it. All right, raise your hand. Somebody raise your hand. Stand up. I see somebody right here. Misty. Yeah, Mike is coming to you. Why do you think that's the case?
My kids can't afford a house. My parents, they knew their kids would go to college, would have good jobs, would be able to afford houses. I don't have that.
Okay, very good point. Very good point. I'll give you, okay. All right, what I want to get into your brains here, which you're not going to see on television, and very few people in Washington talk about it. How does it happen with all of the technology, right? All of the technological changes that we have seen. Why is the working class and middle class not doing better today than they were 50 years ago? All right. So you're talking, I'll give you an example, personal example, all right? I grew up in a family that didn't have much money. I grew up in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York. So my father never made any money, but the rent was controlled. And I did some arithmetic, and I may be off by a little bit. But my best recollection is that my family, without any money, you know what we paid, what percentage of my dad's income we paid in rent? 18%. Anybody here paying 18% of your income in housing? No. There are people here paying 50%. At your point, how again, in God's name, in the richest country on earth, are in many cases, if we don't change it, our kids going to have a lower standard of living than we do. You're right. Young people back then were able to afford a house. Now kids are living in their parents' attics. All right. Why does that happen? Give me an answer here. All right, I see a person right here in the front.
So, hi, my name's Heaven, huge fan. I'm with Bitches Get Stuff Done. I actually have $24,000 in student debt, and because Donald Trump got rid of forbearance on student loans, my 615 credit score dropped down to 478, and now I can't afford an apartment on my own. And that's just an apartment. I'm never going to buy a house. I'm always going to have to live with a roommate. I'm probably going to die in debt. I don't even have a degree. So, bitchesgetstuffdone.org if you want to help fight the revolution. We're a fun bunch. We got arrested. Heather got assaulted on a fucking bridge.
All right, thank you. All right, but again, I want you to be thinking about this. You know, it's not like some terrible catastrophe, you know, a huge natural disaster devastated America and we're just building out. That didn't happen. Today we are more productive than we have ever been. Why can't her kid afford a house? Why is she now struggling with student debt? Why? Give me some answers here. All right, I see your hand here.
Managers are making way too much money and the people that are working aren't making shit.
Well, that's a good. All right. That's a good start. Let me hear more about it. Let me get some more. All right, I got some more. Yeah, where do you got? Misty, you got somebody? Yep.
Among other reasons, participation in labor unions has dropped significantly.
Okay. That's exactly right. All right? When labor unions when labor unions was strong, it benefited not only their own members. When wages went up for union members, they went up for everybody else. That's why we have to rebuild the trade union movement in America. All right, anybody else have thoughts on it? I see a gentleman right there. Stand up, sir.
Well, I remember when, I'm 73, and my name's Greg Barta, but I remember when, like, the computer age and the industrial age and how it was going to benefit humankind or workers and people, but there never was a fair distribution of wealth. It's like always people never benefited from those technologies and computer age because the top was still taking all the money.
That's it exactly. That's it exactly. And by the way, I want you to, I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, but I want you, Greg is your name? All right, Greg's point is absolutely right. Again, if you give somebody a computer, they're more productive than somebody without a computer. Why the hell are they making less money than somebody did before? All right, that's the point. But I got some news that I want you to think about. Right now, Trump and Musk and all of these high-tech guys are putting hundreds of billions of dollars into AI and into robotics. All right, talk to me about AI. People think it's a good idea. They're nervous about it. Who wants to say a word on AI? Stay on AI.
Y luego el senador termina el meeting, la multitud se emociona, se pone de pie y lo aplauden, lo ovacionan, pues fue espectacular, lo hizo muy bien. Mira el clip, por favor.
So my request of all of you is do not let Trump and his friends divide us up, because that's what demagogues do. They divide us up, they have scapegoats, undocumented, trans people, whoever it may be. We got to stand together, whether we're black or white or Latino, Asian, gay, straight, whatever we are. Let's stand together and create the America you know and I know we can create. Thank you very much.
Este fue el video de hoy día, espero que te haya gustado. Si fue así, te agradecería que lo pongas en los comentarios. Tal vez está de más repetirlo, pero si te gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, te va a encantar suscribirte al canal, ya que subo videos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido con informarte diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.